Hi everybody, welcome back to the Astral Urmah channel. Today I have something super interesting and exhilarating to talk about. If you don't follow Cosmic Agency, this might be a little to understand the context that I'm using in the story about Esther. But here we go anyway. I'm going to start off with a short clip of what Gosha said. And if you can read into this, you can understand what the video is going to be about. Okay, she says this. Yazi revealed everything she knew about Esther at the time. As we always say, our lives in the 3D and all of us are intertwined with what happens beyond Earth and other realities. We are not isolated earthly souls without complex histories behind us. What we perceive as our own life in the 3D matrix is only a fragment of a more complicated and extensive trajectory of our souls. The reasons why we are here also entail a series of events to which we normally have no access due to lack of memory. Because of that, and because of that complexity, sometimes it's better not to remember our links with the extraterrestrial worlds because the realities do not fit. The 3D world is very much one-sided and much simpler, and will not always be able to face all of the reality behind it. So that's what this video is about. What we live in, the 3D, what you call your life, is just a fragment. It's a point of attention within a much larger context. The truth is, nobody is born here in isolation. You didn't just appear. You arrived, and most of the time from somewhere very specific, okay? That's why Yazi told Esther everything she had at the time. Because like with all starseeds, Esther's 3D situation didn't make sense on its own. There were too many inconsistencies, too many emotional dissonances. That's always the clue that the context is off, that you're only seeing part of the picture. Esther's case was complicated, not because she was special, but because everyone's is complicated. Okay? When looking beyond the earth, they're all extremely complicated. The thing is that most of the time, the human mind doesn't or can't handle that kind of complexity. You can't handle the truth. And that's where the saying comes from. It comes from exactly what I'm talking about in this video. The extremely complicated lives that our souls live. You can't handle the truth. Okay, but you can, and I'm here to tell you that you can handle the truth in your own time, at your own pace, if you choose to, okay? So my consciousness, on the other hand, thrives on complexity. Anyway, that's why most people are shielded from knowing, not because it's a secret, but because it's irrelevant for the current incarnator, because it would just confuse things more, okay? Anyway, like I was saying, in my case, the complex information and the experiences that I have getting the complex information are not just wanted, they're needed. I feel this hunger inside of me for more and more and more, okay? Esther entered the Earth's matrix through an immersion program, but she didn't come from a linear past. She came from a future timeline. Her real name in that context was Stella of Erra, and she was the daughter of Alanim of Temer, but from a different line, another version, okay? Allegedly, she came back here to warn Alanim and her, and the other Taigetans about an event that would eventually destroy her, kill her, and the other Taigetans. It basically came back to warn of a timeline where they died. Okay? But since time doesn't work the way humans think, this kind of thing happens all of the time. Temporal loops, overlapping lives, soul groups working together across multiple densities simultaneously. And that exactly is what I have seen in my astral dreamscapes as of late. So I want to say that again. Soul groups working across multiple densities simultaneously. If you think that your life is complex, it's because that's what's happening. Now, please try to understand this. From my point of view, this is fascinating. It's exhilarating. And I wouldn't be able to experience that fascination and that exhilaration if I didn't first limit myself and what I know. Okay? These limitations, it's what gives us the contrast of the experiences. Okay. What's weird is how Earth tries to compress everything into a straight line. And yes, it goes deeper. Stella of Erra from the future later gives birth to a girl. That girl becomes Swaru 1. So technically, she's Yazi's ancestor from another vector, which doesn't contradict anything if you stop thinking like a human. This is why our stellar families don't tell us these things unless it's necessary. But that's why remembering, if you want to, in your own time, at your own pace, is the answer. Okay? Because knowing things ahead of a time and before you're supposed to, it might be what you think you want, which is clarity, but clarity is not what you get. What you get instead is paradox, entanglement, and a ton of emotional processing. And most of the time, you don't need that to do what you came here to do. But still, don't forget, you all have stories like this. All of you. What sounds like a mess to the 3D mind is just how reality looks from up there. So no, it's not just Ester. It's not just even the Taigetans. Souls are vast. They're deep. They're wide. You're just seeing the tip of the infinite iceberg of your soul. They trace it all the way back to source. Okay? People think they want to know who they are. They ask, what star system am I from? What's my real name? What's my mission? Those are human questions from a human mind. And from there, from space, the answers don't work in that format because you is not a fixed identity. It's a network of consciousness nodes. Some of them overlap, some contradict each other, and they're all you. That's why Yazi and Athena told Ester what they did. Not to give her a nice story, but because she was already bleeding through. She was remembering in fragments, in dreams, and emotional flashbacks that didn't belong to this life. And when that happens, it becomes necessary to anchor the data before the psyche starts to fracture. But even then, they warned her. Because once you remember, it doesn't stop. And it doesn't make things simpler at first. What it does, though, is it makes things truer. Go think of it. That's what drives most of us is the truth. And that's what I'm trying to bring here is the truth. And that's what I'm all about is the truth. No matter how hard it is to hear, I want the truth. I don't care. I want the truth. I want it to be truer. Okay? And yes, it can be heavier. Okay? Because now you're holding density from multi-realities at once. Everyone gets what they can handle, not what their ego wants. Okay. For those who are asking, how can Stella of Erra be from the future, be Alanim's daughter, and also give birth to Swaru 1? That's because you're still thinking with a human mind. That's because you're still seeing time as a hallway instead of a landscape. Souls don't move forward linearly. You don't incarnate from, 100 AD to 200 AD, then to 300 AD, then to 400 AD. That's not how souls reincarnate, okay? They move across, through, around, always jumping from here to there. Okay, past, present, future, past, Stella's mission wasn't to change the timeline, it was to inform it. Because you can plant awareness. You can alter perception. You can shift outcomes indirectly by adjusting the perception vectors of those involved. Okay, let me say that again. Okay, you can shift outcomes indirectly by adjusting the perception vectors of those involved. And that's what the Federation is trying to do. It's trying to bleed through false realities to keep us unfocused and to keep the trauma loop going. Okay? And maybe they're just doing it to see how strong we are. Okay. So yes, this creates feedback loops, but that's normal. A lot of us are already in them, and it's okay because we're learning. Okay? We're learning. Okay. So many of you are doing the same. You think you're just living a life on Earth, but you're also pulling data, stabilizing timelines, buffering frequency shifts, rerouting events through emotional resonance fields. That's your job. And most of you don't even remember taking it. And that's okay. Okay? Because from here, you're doing it anyway. It's not necessarily about remembering names and planets and mission directives. It's also about learning to function again as a multidimensional consciousness. That's why you're being hit with all this pressure. Not because you're broken, but because you're waking up. And this is my favorite part of the experience. More of us are starting to feel it, that subtle pull, like a memory with no image, just vibration, like waking up from a dream that never fully ends. How many of you are experiencing that? I am experiencing it all the time. I wake up and the dream just keeps on going. Some of us are remembering not just who we were, but who we are elsewhere. We're starting to see the bleed through, alternative lives, other missions, soul group contracts that don't make sense on paper, but feel real. Okay? I want to say that part again also. Soul group contracts that don't make sense on paper, but feel real. It's basically saying we signed up for something that does not make sense from here, okay? But it feels real because it is real, okay? And I'll admit, for a long time, I wanted to wake everybody up to that, okay? I wanted to be like, wake up fast, like, come on, you don't see it already, you don't feel it. But now I understand. That was pressure, and that was not okay. That was me projecting my own process onto others, thinking their lack of recall meant they were behind in some way. But they weren't. They aren't, because remembering isn't superiority. It's just a frequency match with certain data fields, okay? And it comes with weight. Seeing your other lives, your missions, your entanglements, it's not just cool. It can be destabilizing, emotional disorienting, and most people are already at the capacity where they're just managing life in one reality. So no, it's not for everybody, and it doesn't need to be. But for those of us who are being pulled in this, for those of us who can hold it, who can face the dissonance and still choose presence, this is critical because we act as frequency nodes, nexus point souls that see through all of the illusions. We stabilize the perception of the field. We prove it's possible, okay? By us waking up, by us remembering, we're proving that it's possible to transcend this human meat suit, okay? We're remembering so others don't have to. But if and when they do, we will be there. And that's the soul group contract. Not to force, but to be available for each other. So if you're seeing the timelines braid together, if you're starting to feel your name isn't just your name, if you're watching familiar eyes show up in unfamiliar bodies across dreams, visions, and conversations, you're not broken, you're not imagining things, you're tuning in. And we see you. So, welcome.